This is the Just Steph Show, and I'm your host, Steph Palermo, your Italian Boston girl who's an empath, healer, and all-around seeker of wisdom. Tune in weekly for advice on how to live your best life at work, home, or play so you can feel groovy every day. This is Steph Palermo, and it's the Just Steph Show. Everybody has two lives. The second one begins when you realize you only have one. We are second lifers, empty nesters, newly single, and those starting over age 3. Your healthy, happy, hip years are just beginning. And of course, I have my 12 weeks to feel groovy up close and personal that I'm offering to help you navigate the holidays and get into the new year without having to do a list of resolutions. You can work with me, and we are going to be launching an online course. And of course, my Feel Groovy retreat in Sicily. You can just look everything up on juststeph.com, subscribe to my newsletter, and you will get all the info you need. So today I am live with divorce coach, Catharine Blake. Hi, Catharine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Well, what a hard time of year to be talking about divorce, right?
Right, I know. Well, this is probably the hardest time of year for most people.
I know, it is hard. You know what? I actually went through my divorce. I filed for divorce on November 20th in 2013.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was trying to wait through the holidays, but it didn't work out. So
I know. A lot of people try to just get through the holidays, and then January is when everyone usually starts the process, the legal process anyway.
Yeah, it's the busy season, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. So so you have lots of you have 20 years of experience in helping parents and children as a licensed psychotherapist, which is great. Everybody needs a good shrink. And so how did you get, tell me a little bit about your journey from where you've been, and then also, you're now being a divorce coach. How did you get from, your life story to here?
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned having a second life, right? So I've been doing child and family psychotherapy for forever. That's been my only job. And because of that, I was subpoenaed for a lot of custody cases. Right. And so I knew about the legal system. I knew about the divorce process. And about 10 years ago, I went through my own divorce. It was a very high conflict divorce. Mm-hmm. And I kind of went into it naively thinking, I was the one who initiated it. I know the court system. This is going to be easy breezy in and out. And it was a drag out, awful fight. Right. And I realized that even as somebody who had all this training, I had no idea what I was doing. Right. Like, I didn't even know, my daughter was young at the time. I didn't know what a good parenting plan was. I didn't know how to fill out the financial affidavit paperwork. So I kind of came out the other end being like, number one, I wasted a lot of money because I was defensive and fighting a lot of allegations that were thrown my way through the process, none of which made any difference, by the way, to the end result of the divorce. Right. But I came out the other end being like, there's just got to be another way. Right. There's got to be a way where people save money, they have their integrity, they're able to co-parent, because that's the other thing. Once you go through a court battle, the ability to co-parent is really, it's just not there. The base is gone. So I feel like the process really kind of destroyed that. And it took many years for my ex and I to repair that, to get on the same page for co-parenting. Right. So that kind of became my mission. And then I found this training program for divorce coaching, and I signed up for that. And now I'm not only doing one-on-one coaching and group coaching, but I also have a team of providers, basically anyone you could ever need going through divorce and post-divorce, that I oversee. Right. And we host events in the community. Right. So you have, you'll have some lawyers on your team. You'll have some financial planners like Andrea McGrath, yep. Which I think is very helpful. And, my divorce was in Georgia, and it's very different from Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Very different. So, knowing where you're living and what what the law is. I mean, and how would you say do you ask people to get familiar with the law? So, that's the thing. I am not an attorney nor a mediator. So I let people know that. I certainly will contact other resources to find who are the best providers in that person's area. But I have to be upfront that I'm not an expert on every state's regulations and process. Right. So, yeah. I know Massachusetts in and out.
Right.
and I know New Hampshire. And it's funny because even Massachusetts and New Hampshire, there are differences.
Right. Yeah. Like in Georgia, it's a fault state.
Right.
Which is very backwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because then you spend tons of money and tons of time just trying to figure out whose fault it is, which is ridiculous.
Well, and the other part of it is a lot of that is smoke and mirrors.
Right.
To get people to be afraid or whatever, which, it's unfortunate, but it becomes, a knockdown, drag out, fight, like, and dirty.
Yep. So, we tend to refer to it as the throw, can I swear? we call it the throw shit and see what sticks technique. It's an attorney that comes in and they are just, and I went through this, when I got divorced, I hired a very nice gentleman who was super sweet because I didn't think we had anything to fight over. My ex hired a shark. And so it's just throwing allegations, causing drama, stirring up things. And all it does is it creates billable hours.
Right.
For the legal system, a divorce is literally like looking at a business that's dissolving. So it's assets and it's childcare and it's much more black and white than the whole system sort of lets on. Right.
And you end up going crazy. Like I know I was calling my lawyer left and right and, because I was a nut.
Right. So, don't call your attorney, call me because we can sift through and figure out like what's noise and what's an alarm. Like what does your attorney even need to know? What do you even need to fight against? Because most of it is just noise. Right,
because if they're at $500 or more dollars an hour,
right,
it's crazy.
Yep.
And if you've signed up with a coaching plan for you, they can get in touch with you, and it makes so much sense. I mean, if I were a judge, I would be like, okay, you need to go to you, like Catherine. You need to hire Catherine to help you through this, like that. I would. Yeah. That I think that would be a great thing because but the lawyers wouldn't like that, I guess.
So some lawyers do like it and some don't.
Right.
And in many ways, I give the lawyers a credible client because if they're dealing with the emotions with me, they can go sit down with their attorney and just get down to the business.
Right.
And a lot of attorneys, even though for some it's billable hours, the good attorneys, they just don't want to bother with that. They don't want to be gouging out their clients' finances. So,
it's caring. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other part of it is what they're doing is basically being a shrink when they need to just be the lawyer.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, how do you love that? I mean, have you always been an entrepreneur? Or did you just decide to just do your own business?
So I've been in private practice since 2003. First in New York City and then up here in Massachusetts. So for me, I don't know. I love that. I love networking. I love creating your own hours. I love, do you know what I mean? If somebody schedules, a meeting, I'm like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I don't know. I love having that flexibility, particularly as a single mom.
Right. I know it is great with the kids, isn't it?
Yes.
It's great. And that's what I love about being an entrepreneur. And like, if I'm, I can work on a Saturday or Sunday if I want for a few hours or whatever. I can do whatever I want.
Hey, I'm Mike Marino, and I'm making America Italian again, and you're listening to me on the Just Steph Show.
So tell me about your routine. Do you practice self-care? Because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I want to kind of know, because I think it's very important, because not just for entrepreneurs that are listening to the show, but for all of us, it's important to have a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. So, as far as self-care, I definitely, do the basics. Like I exercise. For me, walking in the woods with my dog is key. I have to do that. A big thing that I do every morning, which I started doing recently, is I have a planner and I do it the night before. So instead of just checking off, this is what I think we all do, right? You check off your checklist of like, I have to go food shopping, I have to do laundry, I have to clean the house, I have to, kind of all that stuff. And we get on this treadmill of just doing the day-to-day routine.
Right.
And we forget that we're actually, most of us want to be somewhere higher, right? We have an aspiration or a goal or someplace that we want to go. So unless we make a real conscious effort to plan our time appropriately, and in that, making little steps to reach our higher goals, I think people burn out,
Right.
So that's a big thing that I work with my clients on, that I work with myself on, is just always reaching further, always dreaming.
Well, yeah. And, and the thing is too, gone are the days where, we're just stay-at-home moms, and I did raise my kids for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and I want to ask you about that with the divorce, because I find that interesting. But I think that, even as a stay-at-home mom, I was in that rut of just taking care of everybody else. I mean, basically, if it didn't have a diaper on, it was going to die.
Yeah.
Whether it's a plant or a dog, that's it, I mean, because I had so many kids. But, I think that having that self-care is so important because it has that self-esteem. And I think it's a good example for our kids, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I will tell you, so I also work with people post-divorce too, by the way. But a lot of it is when my clients come in, I'm like, what do you want out of life? And literally it's like,
they don't know.
Particularly my women, they're like, I don't know. I put everybody's needs before mine. I forget what I enjoy. I don't know what it feels like to be in my own skin. I don't know what it feels like to lose track of time for an hour. So some of it is just helping them carve out that space. We all have to do it to just be in touch with themselves.
Right. And I think, and I think you're so caught up in the emotions during a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's really hard to focus on what really is important at that point. But I think that, that self-care and, but also I think in a divorce that love loss is really hard. And sometimes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first place you want to go is with somebody else to get back what you're losing or have lost, but really you have to get it from yourself. Am I right? Oh my gosh,
I just posted a video this morning about that, right? So here's the thing, you can't, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make in divorce, by the way. I call it betting it all on the new relationship, right? So the problem with that is that you're not allowing yourself to be in touch with the grief that everybody has to go through. It doesn't matter whether you initiate it or not. It's the loss of dreams. It's the loss of a relationship, and having the ability to dig really deep and figure out what was my part in the divorce. Because it's things aren't always black and white. What is it that I learned from this experience? What is it that I can take away? What can I grieve so that I am emotionally free and ready to be able to go into another relationship? And I know in coaching we talk about, where do you vibrate? What's your energy? What are you putting out? Well, if you're coming out into a situation and you're feeling unlovable or angry or shameful or upset, like attracts like. You're not likely to meet somebody who's in their higher state of being, and then you have two people who are really kind of falling on top of each other eventually.
So question, how often do you see people who, get into relationships and they seem to be high flying and they're having fun and whatever, and then later on it just,
the relationship.
Yeah, do you see that?
So here's the thing, when people fall in love, right, their brain is literally flooded with drugs. Like the feel-good chemicals are there. And I'm sure, for evolution purposes, there's a reason behind that. But people don't see typically the differences. They don't see the red flags. It's not because they're crazy or they're purposefully ignoring it. It's because literally your brain's just like jacked up. It's like on drugs. And so when those chemicals wear down, which is usually 6 months to 2 years, that's when you start to see the differences. That's when the work becomes apparent as far as how is this relationship going to work, and what do we need to do to make this relationship work. All relationships are both parties giving up something, gaining something, negotiation, boundaries. It's work.
Right.
And so people do, by the way, get addicted to that zing, that zing of the first 6 years, and then they bounce, relationship to relationship without doing the work that really is required to keep a relationship going. But I think just jumping in from divorce into a new relationship, is it okay to date? Absolutely, date and get support, and that's fine, because all of us want to feel loved. But I think you have to go into it with your eyes wide open that you might not be emotionally available nor emotionally quite ready for a long-term relationship right away.
Right. I love that. So what about meditation and all of that with, that high flying vibe? And tell me, are you into meditation? Are you into just affirmations for yourself?
Definitely affirmations. So, and I got to tell you, I came from being, in psychoanalytic training and psychotherapy and CBT, and now I'm doing coaching. And I got to tell you, for me, in my own personal life, coaching has been a million times more effective than therapy ever was, which is why I'm out there doing it now. But, I got to, when I first started dipping my toe into coaching, I was like, I don't know, this stuff seems kind of woo-woo.
Right. It's out there and not scientific.
Right. Until I started doing stuff myself. So I don't call it meditating because I feel like, I'm sort of a hyperactive type A kind of person, but what I call it is mindset. So it's again, part of that self-care is every morning waking up, going through my mindset exercises, deep breathing, and believing it not just here, because I can intellectualize all day long, but here. And that really, for me, took a lot of repetition and just belief that eventually it would happen. And it did. It's like you start to feel different in every cell of your body.
Right. I love it. I think that's great. I've been doing this too as well. And, and in my own situations. And I think what people don't realize is, and I'm going to say this because I've had a couple of relationships that have had some of this. When you're not away, when you have problems with an ex or, through the divorce, and you have somebody else that you've roped into that relationship, they get hit with the crossfire and the shrapnel from whatever is going between the, with the family. So it's just I think it's so important to have conversations, but to be honest. You have to be honest and authentic and know where you stand, and so, I think it's kind of crazy. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what you offer, because I see here you have coaching service, emotional strength and resiliency, emotional support, and then, you have, your specialties with your parenting strategies, communication techniques, high conflict, like all this stuff. So what are some of the things that you offer specifically for clients?
You mean as far as like results or the package?
Well, for the program, your programs first.
So I actually just finished filming. It's an 8-part classroom series, and it's the pathway through divorce. And we have one lesson, so to speak, with each of our people on our team. So you're getting a ton of information with that, and you can kind of watch it on your own time. And then I do one-on-ones. We have online support groups. Depending on how high conflict your divorce is, I will get involved with the other professionals if that's called for. It's a little bit of a different pathway for everybody, but most people come in and do a 3-month package. And the price point difference is, do you want a one-on-one every week, or do you want one every other week?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's that would make sense, especially in a divorce, because but you might need something like you say, okay, I want every other week, but then you're like going crazy the next week because you're like,
right.
I just know when you're not going through the divorce.
I know. I mean, I try to be as flexible as possible. It's just, I get weird calls at weird times occasionally, and I try to be there, whether it's a text and just a little check-in. But number one, at the end of the day, I just want people to feel like they have somebody who's their cheerleader getting through the whole process. So.
Yeah, I think that right there is so helpful. You need somebody who knows what they're doing because I was terrified.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be homeless because that's what was being told to me.
Right.
Not by my lawyer.
Right.
And so you get scared. It's scary. And, I think people don't realize, but like I think it was like 2 years ago, I've been divorced for 4 years, maybe 1 or 2 years ago on Easter, my kids were getting ready to get picked up to go to brunch, and then they were going to come back and have dinner with me. And I cried my eyes out because my kids were being separated on the holiday. I mean, it doesn't mean I didn't want the divorce. It just means that I couldn't stand you still feel that, as long, like I have to say to my son, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that this is happening. I'm so sorry that I'm not there when you're sick. I mean, even now, and I'm fine and happy. So people need to realize what all of this is for them. It isn't just today.
Absolutely. Right.
And everybody gets hurt.
I know. And
the dog gets hurt.
There's no winners. That's the other thing. I think people who go into divorce wanting to win and, my way or the highway. I'm like, you don't win anything. This is about how do we function as a unit somehow in the best way that we can to keep our kids safe and sound,
right?
And not destroying each other,
right? I just think that, if you can keep that in mind, and I think if people can keep in mind the kids, like no matter what, my kids were always put first between the two. Like we were able to sit in the same pew at church, when the kids had something going on.
But that's awesome. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like fantastic. So that's the other thing, by the way. I think there's a lot of stress on divorced couples now to create this like perfect post-divorce life. Do you know what I mean? Like we hang out and we do holidays together and we hang out with the new significant others. And sometimes that puts a lot of pressure on people because, I know for me, like I get along very well right now with my ex, but getting along means it's like one text a week. We have very clear boundaries. There's not a lot of dialogue back and forth, and we certainly do not do holidays together, right?
Right.
Because if we tried to make that happen, that new sort of ideal that everybody's trying to live up to, it would be a nightmare. It just opened up the door for more conflict, more argument, more interaction that wasn't helpful for anybody.
Right.
Even like parenting differences. So I do a lot of work with like people who have co-parenting issues, and they come in. An example is I had a client comes in and says, dad lets the kids go to bed at 10 on the weekends. That's crazy. They should go to bed at 9. He knows that. And she's so worked up and angry. And I'm like, at the end of the, is this going to be a big deal a year from now? 2 years from now?
Right.
We have to, all of us, let go a little bit of control and think of no conflict is better than an hour later bedtime. Do you know what I mean? Right.
And, I think sometimes I get, unless it was terrible, it's like, okay, whatever happens at dad's happens at dad's. Like, all right, that's not here. You know what I mean? Yep. But I think you have to let some of that go, for sure. And you know what? And I think for me personally, really, I wanted my kids and I wanted peace.
Yep.
First. So like, I was just like, okay. So people have to, figure out what they want, what they're trying to get out of it.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So here's an example of where divorce coaching really works. I had a client who's on the financial affidavit, the husband was self-employed, saying he made, I don't know, like 70 grand. Then he's walking around the neighborhood telling everyone he actually makes 90 grand. So she's furious and she's working with me and she comes in and I said, okay, let's look at the numbers. So we start putting out the numbers. I'm like, let's look at attorney fees. I'm like, okay, so your ROI on this like extra supposed 20,000, that's going to be hard to prove, by the way. You might get that back in like 6-7 years. Is it worth it to you? And so that's what I mean. There's a price of peace sometimes. And it's not that I tell people to give in, especially not on something they're going to regret 2 and 3 years down the road. But is this battle really worth it financially, emotionally? Is this,
right.
It's because at the end of the day, that number doesn't change your child support at all, really. It's
right.
like $20 a month,
Right. So yeah, just, kind of picking your battles, knowing what's worth it, and all of that. So, why would somebody go to a divorce coach post-divorce?
So post-divorce, so I deal a lot with people who have come out of relationships with narcissists.
Oh yeah.
And that's a whole, there's the trauma bond and having to still co-parent with somebody who's very challenging and difficult. So my clients might come in, number one, because they're like, I'm still triggered and angry at my ex and I want to be able to move on. Like they have the insight to know that. They don't want to feel this way. Or they're arguing, they don't know how to communicate with their ex. Or they're just emotionally and spiritually still hung up on the divorce and haven't gotten free enough to start dating, to start enjoying life again, to figure out what they want for themselves.
Right.
So, for some people it's, I want a career change, so,
Right.
so there's a lot of people come to me post-divorce actually.
Right. So, who is your ideal client?
My ideal client, so it's so funny, like I have like people flashing through my head. So probably a woman who has gone through a high conflict divorce, who has lost touch with her confidence, lost touch with herself, is trying to reconfigure her life, but just needs a little help and support in how to do that, and also just how to believe in herself. So even though I'm working around divorce and all of these issues, I'm still doing also the general coaching stuff around mindset, around self-care, around what do you want, just kind of that general feel good, how do we get you going kind of stuff. So for me, there's nothing better than seeing a woman who has come in the first session and her energy is shut off and she's scared or hypervigilant or fearful or shameful, and on the other end she's smiling, her energy's lighter, and she's coming in and telling me stories about vacationing with their children by herself, or how she started this new hobby, or she met a new friend. I mean, that to me is like, that's why I do this.
Right. Absolutely.
And you feel it. Like you absolutely feel the difference. So.
Right. I know. And I mean, I know like with my lawyer, we still correspond, and I think she's going to come to my house for my Christmas party this weekend, but yeah. And I love her. But she'll say to me, you're a totally different person.
Yeah.
And I am, but I'm a different person than I was last year. So, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, I think.
Absolutely.
So how can people find you?
So it's so funny because most people find me on Facebook through my personal page. It's just Catharine, Catharine Blake. I do have a website. It's Cat Blake CDC, CertifiedDivorceCoach.com. And that's pretty much it. I am listed. There's not many certified divorce coaches out there.
No. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And I think, as you evolve as a person, you realize sometimes, like, I am so much more evolved right now than I ever was. And I have more coaches than you can count, because it's like, I know this one for this and one for that, and, and whatever, who's going to do a little tapping clearing, who's going to, who's my therapist, whatever I have, because
Mm-hmm.
you get more involved, and you're like, what, I really want to hone in on this, but this person doesn't cover that, so let me go to somebody who's more specialized.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think that's great. So I love that, and I love what you're doing, and I think it's so important, and I think especially 50 plus % divorce, marriages end in divorce.
Yes, first marriages.
So what about the second marriages? Are you seeing a lot of those?
Sometimes, yeah, because that's a higher divorce rate. It's 70%.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yes. Remember I told you I'm single and dating, and I've been divorced for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I think that when it's like anything else, once you go through it, it's easier to go through it again. That first time around, especially with the kids, is so much harder.
Right. Well, yeah. And I also think that particularly, if I know, even for me, I've been on my own for so long. So to start thinking about like living with somebody and like, what is that? You get to this point where you're like, I'm doing pretty well. I am actually working. That's my work that I'm trying to work on, is letting people take care of myself. Me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the great thing about coming out the other side of the divorce, is knowing what you bring to the table, knowing who you are, that self-love, that self-care, and being able to receive that love, because you've been
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we've been giving and loving from an empty tank.
Absolutely.
For so long, and can you just throw me a bone?
Yeah. Right. And then you burn out and you're bitter and angry and wanting to leave the relationship. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
I think the other thing that we do is we're not, and this is a generalization, but not being clear about what our needs are. So we go into relationships like, oh, I don't have any needs. I'm just here to make the relationship work. And then when our needs aren't met, we're angry and bitter and resentful and frustrated. So part of knowing what your needs are is knowing who you are.
And I think too, having the courage to ask for that, because because there's a fear, at least for me, would be that, oh, it's going to be too much to ask for,
right.
And that they're going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, come on, didn't you and I grew up in nice Italian families, right? That's kind of what we grew up with, right?
I'm used to a very good support system, with my family. So, all right. So I have one last question.
Yes.
If you could invite 7 people to dinner, you're the 8th, from any time period, who would it be?
7?
7.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. Anthony Bourdain. Oh my gosh, Sigmund Freud.
Cool.
Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins. Any people? What I said, I'm on 5.
You're on 4.
4. I have to invite someone from music because I love music. Who can I invite? Why don't we invite like Jimmy Page? Would that be good?
This is your table, not mine.
All right, 6. Paul Rudd. He's an actor. He's very cute.
Okay.
And 7. Oh, you know what? 7. My grandfather.
There you go.
Yes.
That's great. I love it. So will you come back?
Absolutely.
Well, you know what?
I'll hang out with you.
I know. You have to come hang out with me. But you know what? I have to ask you one question that I thought of as we were sort of wrapping up. Do you do any like events, like a day-long workshop or, things like that where people, do you do any of those things?
So we do. We host a lot of, usually once a month, we have some kind of event going on in the community. We actually, I don't know if you know Danielle Rocco. So her and I are hosting a men's event up in Portsmouth at a cigar bar. So it's a chance for men to come in and ask questions about relationships. Last month, we had a dating coach that came up and went through people's profiles and helped them hone in on their profiles.
Fun.
Yeah. So we do have a 2-day retreat in New Hampshire in May. Coming up, and I will be posting about that. It's a women's retreat only. So the first day is dealing with divorce and post-divorce. The second day is health, spirituality, fitness, setting goals. It's more of a general coaching kind of agenda. So.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That's really great.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's great. So I'd love to collaborate on an event.
Absolutely.
Let me know. I'll come into town and we can get people to feel groovy.
Yes, let's do it.
Right? Yep. So, well, great. All right. So thank you, Catherine. So again, give me your website again for everybody.
It's catlakecdc.com.
Great. Okay. All right. So remember, folks, you can check me out on Facebook. It's Just Steph, Twitter at Steph Palermo, Instagram, Just Steph 1. I'm on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. The podcast is on iTunes. And of course, you always want to feel groovy with me. And you can check all of the stuff that I am offering at juststeph.com. I love you all. Wishing you love, balance, and peace. Ciao, ciao, baby. Love you. Thanks for tuning in to the Just Steph Show. I really care about you, your happiness, and helping you make great choices for your life. So tune in next week for more wisdom from me. In the meantime, follow me on my Just Steph Facebook page, on Twitter at Steph Palermo. My Instagram account is JustSteph1, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Steph Palermo. See you next week. Ciao, ciao, baby.